Everybody take a breath. Easter is one of the celebrations that we have in Christendom where we truly look at the life of Jesus Christ and the depth of the gift that he brought to the planet. I've been doing Easter services for 20 years. This is my 20th service. And I still do not know the depth of the gift that he brought. I think that we are in a space of evolving to that wisdom and understanding. So I'm going to share with you this morning what I've been asked to share with you from our beautiful angelic guides and teachers. In our Christmas celebration and our metaphysics of Christmas, we start understanding the evolution of man by dealing with the idea of separation. How man came to the earth fully aware that they were children of God, ready to create. And then they got a little bit involved in their creations, and they began to focus so much on their creations that they began to forget that they were children of God, and a separation began. Now you'll remember this, some of you, all right? Jesus Christ came to reconnect us. That was one of the main missions of his life, to take us back into that remembering that we are the children of God. We are connected. He did this through matter. We live in a world of matter. He showed us the God energy, the greater energy, that we could use it, and we could use it to express in this world. And everything that he did with the God energy became greater. God through food multiplied. God through his hands healed. God through the words touched the hearts and enlightened the minds. And everyone could feel that presence of God when he taught and spoke. He was showing them how to bring this greater energy into the world in which they lived so they could become, again, connected with God. And when he did this, he taught us how to do it too. He taught us how to use this power. So his life, his total life, was a demonstration. It was a demonstration of God's love moving through this earth plane. Can you imagine being in his energy? Just standing next to someone who had that great consciousness? Just the very presence would feed you, would it not? When he came to the end of his life, he had done all that he could. He had shared his light, his love, and his gifts with the planet. And now he had to become greater. He had to take God into another level. He could have stayed, and he could have taught, and he could have kept doing what he was doing. And if he had, his following was growing, right? He probably would have spawned a new religion, a new faith, disciples all learning how to do what he did. But the eye of every trainee would have been focused on the power he brought them in the outer. And the eye would have been on this great religion that was now taking form, instead of the teachings, which were the teachings of the heart. Bringing God through matter was not about power, it was about love. It was about going through the heart, feeling that love and letting that express. And he knew his time had come. He had done all that he needed to do. His body was rapidly changing. It was evolving and escalating. So it was time to go so that the seeds that he had planted could be given the food they needed to grow. And this was his last gift, this energy of love that would feed the seeds that he had planted and left behind. So, prior to his last week, he had avoided conflict with authorities at all costs. You realize that? Whenever anybody had come up against him and said anything, he just disappeared. He just said, yeah, gotta go. Don't have time to argue, not going to fight with you. I am on a mission from God, and I'm going to do what I need to do. But the last week would be different. This experience, he was now taking God's love into a space of complete man control. So, if he had powered out over them in the world, it would have been outer power, right? If he had powered out and stood against, and he would have won. If he had stood against the powers of the day, there would have been conflict, he would have won, but it would have been an outer demonstration. not the heart, not that love. So, he needed to dismantle the power of authority, not conflict with it. So, he needed to take the love of God into the place where the love of God did not exist. He had to take the love of God into the place where man stood in power alone. Do you understand? When that space where man's will dominated. When I am in my will, there is no love. Do you realize that? When I am in my will and you are in your will and we are in conflict, where is the love? We have stepped out of that. So, we had forgotten who we were. We had forgotten. So he needed to take the love of God into the depths of this separation, where the love of God did not exist within the heart of man. In the meta story, separation occurred when we went into our will. And in that space, where were we? I want to create what I want. I want what I want. This is what I want. And we lost total focus on love. This is mine. Are you following? Okay. He had to take love into the will of the world. So, you cannot go to the will of the world and tell them they are wrong. Because they have free will. They absolutely can do anything they want. They're children of God. They're neither wrong nor right. They just are. The only way to take it in was to take it into the depth of their expression, so they could feel the presence and the love that they had forgotten. So, as he prepared in that last day, Good Friday, we talked about the Last Supper, and then that night, Pilate sent for Jesus in the aquarium, and Pilate says to him, things are not looking good, there's a lot of rabble going on, and they really are intent on killing you. And Jesus thanked Pilate. He said, Caesar has a noble man in you, you're a noble man, but what is going to happen is going to happen. And Pilate said, Rome will stand in your defense. And he said, no, what's going to happen is going to happen. Thank you. And then he went back to Gethsemane. And we know that he spoke to his three most intimate disciples, Peter, James, and John. He asked them to come up and sit with him while he began to pray. And we know metaphysically his energy was so high that had he faced conflict at any point, he just vibrated away from it. He had to literally lower his frequency to be prepared to go through what he was going through. He went into prayer to take the vibration of his body, to lower it so that it would submit to this demonstration of will that was before him. And they say that he prayed very deeply and sincerely. I wanted to read just a few little scriptures. This is 46 and 47. Actually, we'll do 163, 34 through 39. He's talking to the three disciples, and he says, I am now about to demonstrate the power of every man to conquer death, for every man is God made flesh. I will lay down my life, and I will take it up again, that you may know the mysteries of life, of death, and of resurrection of the dead. I lay me down in flesh, but I will rise in spirit form with mortal eyes, so that you can see. And then he said, I leave you now, and I will go out in the darkness all alone and talk with God. By sorrow I am overwhelmed. I leave you here to watch with me. So, he is preparing by lowering his frequency so that he can walk into this space of separation and hold the energy of God. And he asked the three to watch with him and to hold the light with him. They had been fed so many times by him, so much by him. And we know what happened. They went to sleep. They could not give back. When the time came that he was going to become subject to mortal man, they couldn't give back. They didn't know how. So they slept. So, he had prepared. He did his prayer. When he came back, he asked each of them, can you not stay awake for a minute? And each time, I don't even know that they awoke. He came back the last time and woke all three of them and said, "It's time," and he went. He had prepared, he was ready, it happened. The garden experience when Judas betrayed him with a kiss, and the trials, there were 3 different trials. It happened very quickly. He was arrested Thursday night and he was crucified Friday morning early. So all of this was in just a blink of time. So the death experience was on him very quickly. But with each of the trials, the Sanhedrin going before Pilate, he even went before Herod. In each of the trials, as they passed him back and forth, he said very little. He held the love of God. They accused him. He did not defend himself. He did not argue with them. He said very little. He just stood there and loved them and held in his heart an energy of love that could not be denied. Yet they didn't know what to do with him. And there was so much anger against him, so much fear that he would upset their apple cart. So he was found guilty, his crime, saying he was the Son of God. And for that he was crucified. Even in that moment, the people could feel the love in his heart. And they say that as he was on the cross, and he said, "I give my soul to you, God," a Roman soldier was moved, and he pierced his heart so that he could cross over. He said, "It's enough." So the beautiful love was in every moment. It was in every moment. And in the New Testament and the querying and every text, it says, when his spirit left his body, the veil in the holy temple of the Jews ripped. The veil that kept the Holy of Holies from common man tore. Only a high priest could go through that veil. And when he crossed, it tore. Symbolic of the separation being healed. Symbolic of God now being accessible to all mankind. And they say that in the tomb, he worked, of course, his soul. He went to the lost souls that were in the ethers who had crossed over, not knowing if there's a God, not knowing what to believe. He worked with them. He taught them. He freed them. He took this beautiful love of God to all these spaces. But I want you to really hear, in the greatest space of separation where man's will demands matter to move, a Christ stood with God love in his heart and said, "No, I am love. I do not have to move against you. I am love." When he came back, I wanted to share with you, this is chapter 177. You know, he was visiting people. He resurrected his body. We all know the story. And then he would appear to people, and he would talk to them. This is the Sabbath day in Jerusalem, in the temple. It was a Sabbath, and many priests and scribes and Pharisees were in the temple. Caiaphas, who was the lead in getting him executed, was there. And a stranger came in garb of fisherman and said, "What has become of this Jesus who is called the Christ? Is he not teaching in the temple now?" And the Jews replied, "The man from Galilee was crucified a week ago because he was a dangerous, vile, and seditious man." And the stranger said, "Where did you put the body of this man? Where is his tomb?" And the Jews replied, "We do not know. His followers came at night and stole the body from the tomb in which it lay and carried it away, and then declared he had risen from the dead." And the stranger said, "How do you know that his disciples stole the body from the tomb? Was anyone a witness of the death?" And the Jews replied, "We had 100 soldiers at the place, and every one of them declares that his disciples stole the body from the tomb." And the stranger asked, "Will any of your 100 men stand forth and say, 'I saw the body stolen from the tomb'?" And the Jews replied, "We do not know. These men are men of truth. We cannot doubt their word." And the stranger said, "You priests and scribes and Pharisees, hear me. I was a witness of the facts, was in the garden of Siloam, and stood among your 100 men. And this I know, that not a man among your 100 men will say, 'I saw the body stolen from the tomb.' And I will testify before the God of heaven and earth, the body was not stolen. The man from Galilee is risen from the dead. And then the priests and the scribes and the Pharisees rushed up to seize him and cast him out. But instantly the fishermen became a radiant form of light, and the priests and the scribes and the Pharisees fell back in fear. They saw the man from Galilee. And Jesus looked upon them, and they were frightened. And he said, "This is the body you stoned beyond the city gates and crucified on Calvary. Behold my hands, my feet, my side, and see the wounds the soldiers made. If you believe that I am phantom made of air, come forth and handle me. Ghosts do not carry flesh and bones. I came to earth to demonstrate the resurrection of the dead, the transmutation of flesh of carnal man to flesh of man divine." And then he raised his hands and said, "Peace be to every one of you. Goodwill to all mankind." And then he disappeared. In his last and final act, he brought love to everyone. He brought love to the very men who stood in opposition to him, who played their part in orchestrating the death. He brought love to every level of consciousness. This depth of our subconscious mind, this part of us that feels that we are separate from God, he brought love to every person. When you feel sad, God is still with you. When you're depressed, God is still with you. When you are in that depth of separation, God's love is still with you. And he took that beautiful energy to create the weave, to lift it through the entire psyche of mankind, to bring us peace. All right, Jesus brought love to everyone. Can you understand what I'm saying about the depth of that separation? That as long as we had that in our psyche, we could see God in matter. Oh, God does miracles sometimes. Oh, life is terrible when I'm over here. Do you see? He had to weave it through all of us. And you know, when I read of the healings that Jesus did, you know, the very first healing he did when the mother, he's a young man, and a mom comes to him. And the mom's got her infant in her hands, and she looks at him and she says, "I believe you can heal my child. I believe you are a master teacher of God, and you can heal my child." My heart goes to the woman. My heart goes to the child. I feel the great compassion that Jesus had for them, you know? And the man who begged him to heal his son that had epilepsy, who said, "Oh, please heal him. How many times have we taken my son to doctors? Please heal him." And just, that's the time when Jesus said, "Do you believe?" And the father said, "I do believe. Help thou my unbelief." And my heart goes in compassion to that human part of him, to that man and his son, you know, and the love that Jesus had for them. You know, my heart goes there, and every time I read the stories, I know what the ending is. I can't wait to read those words. I can't wait to read what happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and you just feel the touch of Jesus' love for us. But I want you to hear what I'm saying. Where does my heart go? It goes to those spaces of the human condition. It goes to the worry and the heartache of mankind. It goes there. I had an interesting experience a couple of weeks ago. I was reading something. I don't know if it was the Aquarian, I don't remember, but I was reading about Jesus' experience at Gethsemane. And it was, you know, just recounting, and I could, you know, going in, praying. And I was taken immediately to that energy of him praying alone in Gethsemane. I started to cry. I just felt the depth of love, his love for mankind, his great service to mankind. I felt his love. I loved him. And there was just oneness in the depth of the sorrow he was experiencing and the love he was experiencing, the human nature. And then I did something I'd never done before in my life. I started to pray for him. I said, "God, send your love back to that moment in time, back to when he went through that experience, and let him feel the love you have." And immediately, the sorrow was out of my body and there was only light. And I would like to say I understood what happened, but I didn't. I went, "Oh no, did I do the wrong thing?" I immediately said, oh, am I not supposed to pray for Jesus? Oh, no. Who would think of praying for him? Do you see? When we watch and listen to the healing stories, do we think, go Jesus, come on, be the Christ? We don't. We don't. We go to the deep compassion that he had for mankind. And I think at that time we needed to go there. We needed to be that. We need that compassionate love where we know God loves us to the depths of our challenges and issues. But we also need to stay awake and support the Christing of our planet. I wonder if this Easter is our opportunity to celebrate the Christing energy he brought. To celebrate that he did it. To celebrate that everything I do, you shall do and greater. Do you see what I'm saying? To feel our oneness with him while he's demonstrating. Any of you who are healers, and when you're in the throes of healing, when you're doing healing work, you have to be one with the Christ. You can't be in compassion with your client. You have to love your client. You love your client. Compassion, wrong word. You can't be feeling the depths of their sorrow. You can be lovingly compassionate, but you have to be in the higher energy of the oneness with Christ. And then when they get off the table and they feel better and that's great, you celebrate that energy, don't you? You celebrate that energy that you just shared with the Christ. Perhaps our hearts need to turn to that, to seeing. To seeing. We have been one in the depths of our souls with the Christ. Now let us be one in the heights of our souls with the Christ. Let's be one in the heights. Jesus said, I painted a rainbow on the walls of time so the sons of men could find their way. And what I have done, all men shall do. Have we not brought God to the depth of our emotions? I mean, you're sitting here. You're working people. It's a working church. We're working on ourselves. Let's bring that Christ to the heights of who we are. Matter is wonderful. It's a miracle that we get to come to this place and create. Jesus' demonstration, matter is an illusion, is a miracle. Now what do we do with that? If I get to create, and matter is just my experiences, why not create consciously with love? Christing. Christing the individual heart to walk one with the light of the Christ that Jesus brought. At some point during the death, burial, and resurrection, there was a celestial baptism of the earth. The vibration of this man who had ascended was bathed on the planet so that everyone could be fed what they needed. We could bring in the energy of the divine. We could bring in the energy of the idea of ascension. We could bring in the particles of his breath and his body. Because they say, science says, we're breathing the same air the dinosaurs breathed. The breath that I'm breathing in, people in the back row are breathing in. We're all sharing in this energy. We can bring in the divine consciously to really make our life that resurrection and that ascension. How do you feel? Let's take a breath. Put your feet on the floor. Father, Mother God, I ask that your love enfold this room. And I ask that a beautiful column of light come over each one of us. A column of light that is just for you. And I want you to feel God love moving through you now. Just feel it moving through your body. And I want you to ask that the love of God now move through your sorrows. Those spaces within you that you have held the love of God outside of. I ask that the love of God move through my disappointment. I ask the love of God move through my sorrows and regrets. I ask that beautiful love of God to move through anything that makes my spirit heavy. And I ask that this love transmute all of this energy. I now ask that that beautiful love of God move through my spirit. I ask the love of God to move through my potential. I ask the love of God to move through my entire awareness of self. Feel your body becoming balanced. Feel a beautiful center star at the heart. The lows not so low. The balance in the heart. Father, Mother God, we would ask now to learn to demonstrate the power of love, even as Jesus demonstrated love. And breathe, feel the beautiful diamond in your heart, and just ask that Jesus Christ stand before you now. I want you to put your hand in His. And take a moment to feel the love. The love that He has for every part of you. And breathe it in. And now send your love for Him. Thank you for being who you are. For coming to get us. For holding us. Then as you feel that connection, just notice that He opens His arms and shows you a path in front of you. It's a beautiful path filled with light. This is the path of your own personal Christing. It is not the path that any teacher has told you to follow. It's the path for you and your heart. I want you to breathe and take a moment. And you can hold the Christ by the hand. But take your first step on that path. Just look at your feet. You are standing on holy ground. No matter where you walk, God is with you. And you are free to be that love that you have inside. Feel this path. For some it may be wide and radiant, for some more narrow and sparkling. It is yours. Ask that it be surrounded with joy, filled with peace. We can see the demonstrations of God through vast creations or through overcoming challenges. You choose. It is your path. But in the depths of your being, choose love. I choose love. Father, Mother God, as we all stand in this beautiful space, I ask that your light guide us. I ask that we feel that beautiful resurrection of our own spirits into your care. And we know that we are your children and there is no separation. We thank you, God. Just breathe and bring your focus back into this moment, back into the physical, back into your chair. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Repeat after me, if you choose. I am divine.
I am divine.
And so it is.